Before we begin, we want to note that this episode discusses violent crime and the deaths of children. If this is difficult content for you, please feel free to skip this episode or listen when you're ready. Welcome back to Chasing Midnight. Ah!
All right, so our next case we're going to do another we both read. So let us know if you like it this way.
Just bear with us. We're going to tell you a story.
It's May 5th, 1993 in West Memphis, Arkansas. 3 little boys disappear into the woods that evening and never make it back home. And by the next morning, a nightmare begins. A town turns on its own, and 3 teenagers who became the perfect targets in a storm of fear.
This is the case that defines the satanic panic, the case that stole 18 years from 3 young men, and the case that still leaves one question behind. If they didn't do it, who did? Today, we're telling the full story of the West Memphis Three. And trust me when I say that nothing about this case is what it seems. So, let's begin.
So on May 5th, 1993, 3 8-year-old boys, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore, went missing while riding their bikes in a neighborhood in West Memphis, Arkansas. The next day, their bodies were discovered in a drainage ditch deep inside an area known as Robin Hood Hills. They were nude, hog-tied with their own shoelaces, and submerged in water. Officers arriving at the scene were horrified. The boys had injuries that looked violent, targeted, and deliberate. But years later, forensic experts determined that most of the wounds weren't torture at all, but post-mortem animal predation from turtles and fish. But in 1993, that wasn't known, and panic filled the gaps where evidence didn't.
And once fear enters an investigation, logic usually tends to leave it. The early 90s were the height of the satanic panic. Schools, churches, law enforcement, everyone was convinced that occult groups were hiding in plain sight. So, when a brutal crime happened, the police didn't look for a killer. They looked for a Satanist. And in West Memphis, that meant looking for Damien Eccles. So let's talk about the 3 teens who became the center of this storm. Damien was 18, and he wore black, he listened to heavy metal, he read Stephen King, and he practiced Wicca. To investigators drowning in satanic panic, that was enough. Jason Baldwin was Damien's 16-year-old friend. He was shy, quiet, had no criminal record, and he was targeted mostly because he hung out with Damien.
And then there was Jesse Miscali Jr., 17 years old with an IQ around 70, and police interrogated him for 12 hours without a parent or an attorney, and only 46 minutes of that interrogation was recorded. And in those missing hours, police fed Jesse details and corrected him repeatedly and pressured him into a confession that didn't match the crime scenes. His story changed over and over, morning, afternoon, evening. It was never the same. He said a rope was used, and officers corrected him and said, "Shoelaces?" And Jesse repeated it back. Despite the contradictions, his confession was the cornerstone of the case, and it pulled all 3 boys into a nightmare.
The trials that followed were dramatic, chaotic, and deeply flawed. Jesse was tried first because of his confession, and he was sentenced to life plus 40 years. Damien and Jason were tried together, but there was no physical evidence even linking them to the murders. Not a fingerprint, not a drop of blood, there was nothing. Prosecutors focused on Damien's interest in the occult. His drawings, his music, and books, anything that they could twist into being satanic. They brought in occult experts who later turned out to be basically frauds, and then they presented a partial fiber match that wasn't even unique. A girl claimed that she overheard Damien confess at a softball field, but her story changed multiple times. A jailhouse snitch said that Damien confessed too, and he later admitted that he lied and he just made that up. Despite the weak evidence, the verdicts were life-changing. Jason got life in prison, and Damien got death row. And with that, the West Memphis Three were gone.
But the story didn't end inside a prison cell. Not even close. In the early 2000s, everything started to shift. New DNA testing found no trace of Damien, Jason, or Jesse at the crime scene. Testimony began to fall apart, and witnesses recanted. The Paradise Lost documentaries brought national attention and garnered celebrity support from Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, and others. One hair found on the bindings was consistent with Terry Hobbs, the stepfather of victim Stevie Branch. Another hair matched a friend of Hobbs, but Hobbs denied involvement. And in the documentary West of Memphis, a neighbor even stated that she saw Hobbs leading the boys into the woods the night they disappeared. It wasn't enough to warrant charges, but it raised massive suspicion.
But there were also other ignored leads and crime scene issues. On the night of the murder, a man covered in blood and mud, with a cast on his arm, stumbled into a nearby Bojangles restaurant and headed to the women's restroom. He even left blood smeared on the bathroom walls, and police collected the blood sample, and then they lost it before it even made it to the lab. That man has never been identified. The crime scene was contaminated almost immediately. Officers walked through the water, evidence was mishandled, and a rescue worker accidentally snagged one of the bodies with the stick. No proper grid search was done. It was chaotic, it was messy, and rushed. Then, after almost 2 decades, a strange legal twist changed everything.
In 2011, the West Memphis Three were offered an Alford plea, and this meant that they could claim innocence while legally admitting the state had enough evidence to convict them. So it's a loophole that protects the state from being sued for wrongful imprisonment. But it also meant freedom, and so after 18 years in prison, the three teens, now grown men, walked out on August 19th, 2011.
So, where are they now, you may wonder? Damien Eccles lives outside Arkansas. He writes books and he fights for other wrongful conviction cases. Jason Baldwin works with innocence organizations. He's married and he lives quietly. Jesse Kelly largely stays out of the public eye, but he still lives in Arkansas and he rarely gives interviews.
So, three children lost their lives, and three teenagers lost nearly 2 decades behind bars. And the real killer has never officially been found. The West Memphis Three were not just convicted, they were created by fear, hysteria, and a justice system desperate for answers. Until the truth of what happened in Robin Hood Hills comes to light, this case will never truly be closed.
So, the thing with this case is while we were researching, I went through all of the court transcript from Damien and was it Jason?
Yes,
Damien and
they were together.
Jason's what is the word? Trial?
Hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Denied?
And the little pre-trial where they bring in the jurors and they kind of explain the case a little bit. Oh my god.
It was just arguing back and
It
forth
was
between the judge and the
and the attorney
attorneys.
and
The prosecutor, right?
yes, and there
Yes.
was an officer who was on the case, and the officer had to verify every single piece of evidence to see if it could be used in the trial.
Hmm.
And everybody was just getting mad at each other. And so the prosecutor is trying to omit a piece of evidence that they find is going to be important to the case. And it has something to do with the occult and saying that Damien was found in the woods naked, hollering, doing chants and whatever with
Yes.
people around a bonfire. Like it was this whole whatever. And the judge said, no, denied. And so he keeps bringing it up, and the judge butts in and said, denied again. And then he keeps trying to use the occult angle, and the judge says, you can say that, but I'll just deny it again.
So if you hear us just randomly go, denied,
Denied.
denied again,
You can say it. I'll
I'll
just
just
deny
deny
it
it
again.
again.
That is where it's from.
That's where it's
This
from.
whole case was so mishandled, and there's so much that was overlooked. And I don't know why they did not do more with the stepdad.
No, absolutely. See, my thing is that it didn't specifically say whose shoelace it was on. So, like, if that gave us some more clarity there and it was on Stevie, which is his stepson, okay, I would believe, it's around the house, his hair could have fallen, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the other boys' shoelaces, though, I don't believe it.
And they tried to argue at one point that the man who went into Bojangles had some kind of involvement because he did have blood all over him and he was muddy. And this all happened in.
It was like an embankment, kind of like
Yes.
a ditch
Yeah.
embankment sort of thing.
Um, and so it very much would be, I mean, messy. But people are also stating the guy had a cast on his arm, so how would he be able to hog tie anybody
Hmm.
and do it effectively to get the result that these boys ended up in?
Yeah.
But I almost wonder why they didn't kind of question him a little bit more, because what we left out was that once somebody saw this man come into the restaurant, they did call the police, and the female officer went up there to investigate. But she went through the drive-through and spoke to the manager through the drive-through, and they just determined that it was not
Anything connected.
suspicious.
Hmm.
Why?
Like, even if it's not connected to the West Memphis Three,
Is that not a concern?
it's a little bit concerning to me.
Like, whose blood is that? And if it's his, let's call him an ambulance. Like, let's.
Yeah.
But he left and smeared his blood all over the place and disappeared into the night. I just feel like there could have been so much more done with this, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Well, let us know in the comments what you think about it. Um, honestly, this is not the first time that I've heard of this case, but it is the first time that I have gone through all of the details,
Hmm.
and it's sickening. It bothers me so much.
I agree.
All right, we will catch you next time. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share all of the things. Show us the love, and good night.
Good night.
Night night. Love you.
Night, I love you.